Okay, Martin, here we go. I'm going to try to put 80 years worth of living into this video. I'm sure it'll be more than one as I do it. One thing I kept thinking about doing it, and then I was like, oh no, I have to put on some makeup and nice clothes. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. This is the way you see me every day, so you can see me like this in this video. So today is December the 19th, 2025, and hopefully I can get this done before the end of 2025. But I need to get started because the longer I wait, the longer the story is to tell. Although the most recent years won't be much to tell because you've been here too. Anyhow, what I thought I would do is I want to start by placing some context for Mimi and Papa because I think it's important as far as understanding them, and I think it's an interesting story. Mom was born to Nanny and her husband. She had an older brother we called Uncle Billy, and there were just the two of them. And when Mom was about 5 years old, Nanny got a divorce from Will Moore, her husband, which is kind of unusual for that day and age. And I don't know what it was about. I wish I had done a video with Nanny because lots of stuff about her life I would love to know. But Nanny took Uncle Billy with her to go to Colorado Springs, where she was a practical nurse, helping people like in their home. And she felt like she could only do that with one child. So, and her best friend, who we called Auntie, had been married to her husband, who was a doctor up in the mountains of North Carolina, not too far from where we were at the family reunion. And Auntie and her husband had been married several years, and they weren't having children, and they really wanted a child. So Nanny said, well, you can take my little Beulah. And it was no papers, nothing legal. Apparently it was done, but you got to wonder what Mimi thought. Like, oh, you don't want me, you just want my brother. And so she went to live with them. And she loved Paul very much. He was a doctor, a country doctor. People would pay him with chickens or pork meat or whatever they had. They were poor people. But the doctor, she lived upper middle class life with him. And as luck would have it, I don't know how many years went by, but pretty soon, the Mrs. got pregnant with someone we called Aunt Bert, even though they were no blood relation to us. And Mom loved Aunt Bert a lot. She was a younger sister. And but then Mom just kind of very much became a second-class citizen. And Auntie apparently had some mental health issues, and Mom said she chased her one time with a butcher knife. So, childhood memories. But she was able to go to college, which was very, very unusual for women, like in the 30s. I think she majored in English. She got out and she went to work at Sears. There used to be a big department store called Sears and Roebuck, and Mom was working there. And that's where she met Papa. Papa, in the meantime, had an extremely abusive in many ways and disadvantaged childhood. Mom had all the material things, but had perhaps some, emotional disadvantages. Getting back to Mom, Nanny would come and visit, and Mom could visit with her, and so it wasn't like they didn't keep up. And sometimes even there was competition with, like, who did mom want to be with the most and all that kind of stuff. And she always hated that and had never wanted children to be in the middle of adults, like in divorces and things like that. Anyway, Papa was born to Grandpa Tony and Papa's father, Dorothy, who I never met because she got hit by a bus, I think before I was born. But she had been a wild child back in those days, whatever wild meant, and they sent her to a convent school to get straightened out. And there she met Grandpa Tony, who was the kind of the maintenance man there, and she ended up running off with him. And his father had come over from Mexico back in the day when people could come back and forth into Oklahoma. And I don't remember about his brothers and sisters, but they had 3 children, Grandpa Tony, and Papa was the youngest. There was an older brother and a sister whose name was Marie, and that's my middle name, is after Aunt Marie. So they really were itinerant ne'er-do-wells. Apparently they were dealing drugs. Don't know if they were using or not, but Papa he talks about being truant and like grabbing a motorbike and taking it for a joyride. And once the truant officer took him down to the jail and showed him his parents in jail there and said, that's what you're going to become. Also, they got, when they had been picked up, I don't know, maybe many times, he was selling newspapers before he could read, and like somebody said to him, right there on the front page, it's about your parents being, drug kingpins, and they got arrested. So he was put into a boys' home, he and his brother Price, and his sister Marie went somewhere else for girls, and he went to a boys' home in Oklahoma, and it was, they were a Protestant minister and his wife, and they really loved Papa. He was cute and bright, and meantime, his brother Price, though, was getting into juvenile delinquency, and they didn't know anything about where Marie was. But so the couple wanted to adopt Papa, and I don't know if they had children of their own, but he said no. Marie came, and she had remarried a man named Joe Lawrence, and that's where the Lawrence comes in. Otherwise, we would be Garcias. And she said no. And, Papa talked about this with me after we moved out here, and, it was really very hurtful because, they came and got him eventually, but, just moved from town to town. He said one time what really hurt his feelings, he was a good student, and, when he was in school, but one time they moved after the end of 2nd grade, I guess, and the new school made him repeat 2nd grade, and he was very insulted by that because he felt like he could do the work. But I know schools, and when you have kids and the records show they've moved around a lot, and the parents are obviously not educated, and they take advantage of that. So anyhow, that was Papa's backstory. So when he and Mom met, they were determined to give their children a different kind of life with some stability. And they used to play cards in their apartment complex. They had a couple who were friends, and those people were Catholic, and they had a young priest who would come over and play cards with them. And so Mom and Dad got interested in the Catholic Church, and they converted to the Catholic Church shortly before I was born. And because they had never really been raised with any kind of religion, Papa, of course, not at all. And Mom said she would go to church with her friend, some of her friends, and they were usually like, some Protestant denomination like Baptist or whatever. So they joined the Catholic Church, and so they started their family. Donnie was born, and then Mom had a miscarriage, and she had a stillborn. And I'm not sure which came first, but the doctor said, we don't think you're going to be able to have any more children. And then 5 years after Donnie was born, I was born. And Papa was in Okinawa in the Army. He had enlisted in the Army. And so when he came back, I don't know, I think I was like less than a year old maybe, and Mom said I was kind of like, I don't know, who is this person? But when he was gone, we lived with Nanny. And so anyhow, then when he came back, then we got a house, and this is in Memphis now. So I was born in Memphis, and spent, let's see here. I don't remember anything about that because I think we moved to Kentucky. But then, Martha was born 2 years later. Then 3 years later, Mary, Mom and Dad took the Catholic, and still, I think, opposes birth control, which is, just ridiculous. And I don't think most Catholics pay attention to it. But ergo, they were having kids, every year or two. So we had 5 years between Donnie and me, 2 years between me and Martha, 3 years between Mary and me, then about 5 years between David and me. So David, Paul, and Fred were like in a little triplet situation as far as age, like Martha, Mary, and I were. And then you got the bookends. Melanie was born 5 years after Fred was born. I was born 5 years after Donnie was born. So we have a male and a female bookends with 2 sets of 3s in between. So some memories. I loved our little town we lived in Kentucky. We moved there because Papa was working for a big carpet company called Mohawk Carpets. And he would, he traveled all around Kentucky, all the little small towns, to the furniture stores, and he would take them samples of the carpets and try to get them to carry that line of carpeting. But we lived in a house kind of out in the suburbs, and I had not started school yet. And one year, Donnie was going to make a soapbox derby. I don't know if you know about that, but I think they still have it. And it's supposed to be the boys make this little race car out of wood and with the wheels and themselves, and then you have races, and whoever wins the local race goes to a regional and so on. And Donnie he was building it, and he was sawing this wood, and I was holding it for him. I was holding the board, and I came up just about to where the board was, where he was sawing, and he inadvertently, the saw kind of got me like right on the corner of my eye, not like right in my eyeball, but of course, it was bleeding, and he just ran in the house screaming and crying, "Mom, I killed Judy." And Mom sees me there with this and blood coming out. Anyway, I started school with a patch over my eye, so it was fine. There's no residual damage or anything, but I remember that very much. And one of the seminal stories that I remember that kind of characterizes my persona was Mom had us go out, me go out in the backyard with Martha and Mary. And it was kind of in the spring, but still kind of chilly because we had on little jackets. And we had gotten this little toy ray and hoe and a rake and hoe and shovel, and we were going to plant stuff. And we're very intent on that. And Mom at this time had David and Paul probably as, young baby and a toddler in the house. So all of a sudden I looked around, and I didn't see Mary anywhere. And I looked up, it seemed like it was half a mile away, but it probably was a couple of blocks. There was a big field, and I saw Mary. She just looked like a little dot that far away, and she had a little scarf on her head. And I just had this like, oh my God, I lost Mary, and she's way over there. And I came up with this memory once I went for therapy years and years and years ago, and he had me write an autobiography. And as I'm writing it, this story came into my mind, and then I just started weeping. And I realized that a seminal part of me is this thing that I feel a responsibility for my younger brothers and sisters. And Papa said to me, without me even bringing this up to him, when we moved out here, and we were sitting around, and he said, "Your mother and I realized we put too much responsibility on you," and it's true, and I don't blame them. I understand it, but it's like you really don't put. I was, like I said, at that point I think I was about 5. And that's not old enough to quote unquote take care of little ones. So, and then there were other aspects of that. I remember when I got the message on an answering machine, more about that later, of when Paul got killed. And my first instinct was it was my fault. I didn't take care of him. Now, this is ridiculous. He was a 30-year-old man with a wife and 2 kids. And I hadn't seen him for a number of years. I was living in New York, and, he was in an accident at work, and it had nothing to do. But that is, like, so ingrained in me. I've had to, like, really work on that, and a lot of it plays in with Martha and all her issues and feeling a need to, like, watch over her and take care of her. I've let go of a lot of it. But as I've gotten older, because I can't take care of them. So anyway, so school, I loved school, loved it. Our little school was a little Catholic school, and at first, second, and third grade were all in the same classroom, and it wasn't crowded. So it was small enough, and actually that was kind of a nice model because we all had our separate things, but you could it's sort of like the old one-room schoolhouse, and you could hear all the other stuff going on with the other kids. And so after third grade, the principal and the teacher wanted my good friend Ruth Ann Kreiner and I to skip 4th grade and go right to 5th grade. And because, our skills were advanced. And Mom thought about it, and she decided against it. Ruth Ann did go ahead. And it turned out we moved after 4th grade anyway there. But Mom felt like, well, I would get into high school and all my friends are getting their driver's license and I can't because I'm not old enough. And, she just thought, it would all catch up with me eventually. So other memories, I remember we had crayons, just a little box with 8 in them. That's all you had back then. And we had our name on the outside, and Sister, the teacher, would pass out our little crayon boxes and then take them back up when we were done with crayons so that we would have them when we needed them. And somehow the little cardboard top came off of my crayon box, and she made me crawl around on the floor looking for it. And I have never forgot. I was so humiliated. And, it's just not the kind of thing you do to, I think I was in first grade. What else? Donnie, it seemed like Donnie, he was not a good student, and he had kind of I don't know how to describe his, he seemed to like not get along great with a lot of the other kids. And, sometimes a teacher would say, "Oh, you're not like your brother." Again, just a no-no, don't. They still do it today, and it's not just the nuns. I've heard other teachers do that, but anyhow, it didn't really make me feel good. It made me feel bad for him. So Papa was traveled a lot. He was out of town. I remember one time, I don't know what Martha, Mary, and I did, but Mom said, "Well, when your father gets home, you're going to get a spanking." So we went in our room and we put on every pair of underpants that we could find. We didn't get a spanking. We got a good talking to. Corporal punishment was not a big part of it. I think a little more of Papa with the boys. I don't know about spanking so much. Mom sometimes would get a switch off of a bush and, say, I'm going to switch you. But definitely the girls didn't get it, and the boys didn't. It was not, I don't think, used. I don't believe in it at all. I don't think it really works for kids. But anyway, so then, unbeknownst to us, the doctor whose family Mom had grown up in, he had died, and he left Mom a sum of money. I don't know. I think it might have been around $5,000 or $10,000. Not a huge amount. It was pretty sizable, better than now. For like 1950, and Mom had it in the bank, and she wanted to use it as a down payment on a house. So I think we were renting at this time. She didn't know it, but when Papa was out being a traveling salesman, he was going to racetracks. His gambling thing that he had picked up as a young juvenile delinquent, and he ended up using all of that money. So we moved to Memphis, and we all lived with Nanny and Pawpaw, who was her second husband, who, rumor has it, he had been in the KKK. He was just a gruff. He didn't interact with us much, and went to school there. I went there for 5th grade, and the funny thing, it was a big school, which of course we weren't used to, and we took a school bus. So that was an interesting situation. But so Papa was looking for work. I don't know whether he had resigned the other one or what, and he ended up he opened Lawrence Carpets in Birmingham. So we moved to Birmingham in a big, 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 gorgeous old house. I mean, we lived in some nice they had to be old to be big enough. And of course now, that's the kind of house everybody wants, but I wanted to have like a ranch house, a split level modern house. But we lived in those big old houses, and we went to St. Paul's School, all of us, and Donnie went to John Carroll High School, which is where all of us eventually went to and graduated from, except for Melanie. So 6th, 7th, and 8th at St. Paul's. I loved it. I played volleyball and wasn't that good because I was so short. That was the only, no, we had softball too. Yeah, I played softball and volleyball. And that was fun. I loved it. I had friends. I never have been a person that sat around and said, "Oh, I don't have any friends." And I don't know. I think I'm friendly to almost everybody. And one time when you were in junior high, you asked me if I was a nerd or if I was popular. And I said, well, I probably lean a little more toward the nerd department, but I was friends with the popular kids too. And because, I liked them and, they liked me fine. We didn't necessarily do all the same things on the weekends or whatever. But so once I graduated from 8th grade and I went to John Carroll, which was such a, oh, but man, all of us from my class went over there. So it was a high school of about 1,000, and it was like 250 in each grade. And but that summer, before high school, I think we had gone to visit Nanny, which we often did in the summertime. But I got a fever and I was kind of sick, and I stayed back, and Mom had to come home with the others, the other younger ones. And Nanny and I came home on the Greyhound bus, and I remember just being miserable. I had a fever, so I had chills, and it was the air conditioning. It was so cold on that bus. So Mom took me to the doctor, and actually, it was a doctor who I had babysat for him. And anyway, his name was Dr. Crow, and they didn't know. They took blood tests, and so they put me in the hospital. And I was just sleepy. I was tired and just, didn't feel good, but they did blood tests and everything, and they had suspicions. One was leukemia. And, so Mom and Dad are dealing with those possibilities. And the hospitals at that time were very strict. There were strict visiting hours, like, 6 to 8 p.m. or something. And you had to be over 12. So, of course, I was 12 and, 13, 14, I don't know. And Martha and Mary weren't. So they put on nylon hose and little lipstick, and they would come up there to visit me. So I don't know, I guess I was there a week or so, and finally they said I had mono, I think, or they thought maybe paratyphoid fever, because Nanny had a little parakeet, and sometimes they can carry that germ. But when I got out, I think school had just started, and I really wanted to get over to high school. And I had to have a note saying that I could take longer time in between going to classes and everything, but I never did because I didn't want to be, it was bad enough. I was different enough in that I came in about a week after everybody else, and I loved high school. And I had world history in 9th grade, and my teacher's name was David Vigilante. He was a little short, little, not really nice looking Italian guy, and myself and several of the girls, we all had such a big crush on him, kind of like some of the girls at CPA had on Mr. What was his name? Not Lindboom, but anyway, you'll remember him, strawberry blonde hair. And so that was 8th grade, and of course we had to take religion, and that was okay. And I took Latin, first year Latin, Algebra 1, which I kind of, wasn't my favorite. English I loved, and I don't remember, we had to take gym and art, I think. And then after 2 years of Latin, I took 2 years of French. And the only other option would have been, we didn't have more advanced Latin, but I could have taken Spanish. So, but I opted for the French, and none of us liked the French teacher. And because it was French, and she would, pronounce the words like this, and we called her rubber lips. And our classes there, and I don't necessarily think this is a good thing, but we took an entrance exam, and it's called levels, and So there were the group of kids who were college bound, kind of were all together taking all of our classes together. So we were really kind of arrogant, shall we say. And I can remember in my junior year, we were supposed to read these nursery rhymes in French and do a book report on them. And we just kind of blew it off. And I come home one afternoon and Mom was standing there with this. They had, what do they call, failure notices that were sent home. And all of us got the failure notices because she said, we were, in so many words, too big for our britches. And it was true. We were really kind of like, yeah, we're the smartest ones in this school. But I loved the football games, the basketball too. I don't remember going to any baseball games. There were no girls' high school sports. The only thing was in PE, and that's all. This was before Title IX. So now girls have many options. So this is back in the prehistoric days. I liked gym, and I liked the gym teacher, and she was the moderator of a YWCA, a girls' summer camp. And she asked me and some of my friends to be counselors out there. And so I did that 2 summers, and I worked in the horseback patrol, not having any experience with horses particularly, except always wanting one. But I learned how to take care of these horses. In the morning, we'd have to go out in the pasture and get them, put the bridle on them, bring them in, brush them down good, put the saddle blanket on the saddle. I know how to do all of that stuff. And then the kids would come in different periods. And some of them we had to just kind of lead them around, but some of them we began to teach them a little bit about really how to ride. And that was fun. And sometimes we'd get up really, really early, and the counselors, a lot of us would go on long trail rides, like going really fast. I mean, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised I never went off that horse. But what else? I think Martha and Mary came out to that camp at one point. And then after my junior year, I got selected to be the editor of the paper. And I loved that. It was almost like a debate team. We had a room where we would go and, we would figure out what the stories for that, I think it was a monthly, were going to be, and the layout of the paper and the pictures. We had photographers. I had guys who did the sports, and we just had a lot of fun with that. So somewhere along the line there, I guess I started thinking, let me do a pause here.